The General Assembly also passed a bill early this morning that would give rideshare drivers the right to form a union. Drivers for companies like Uber and Lyft could elect union representatives and perform union activities like collective bargaining. Drivers say a union is necessary because of low wages and limited opportunities to appeal deactivations or to have a say in setting rules. Drivers who are interested in forming a union would need to follow specific guidelines to do so, like obtaining signatures supporting the formation of a union from 10% of active drivers, then 30% of active drivers in order to become a certified union. From there, the union can petition the Illinois Labor Relations Board to conduct an election for individual union representatives.